Before you ask, it involved a vest, a trailer, and a turkey, and I will not be elaborating.
Was the turkey live or frozen?
I just said... Night creeps into the bedroom of a small child. He pulls the blankets tighter to himself as though it will act as a shield against the twisted creatures waiting to come lurking out of the darkened closet door. The only light in the room is a glint of moonlight peering in the window. Just enough to highlight the nasty saber-toothed abominations, the tentacled monstrosities, and the scaled fiends of his nightmares that wait for him to fall asleep, that wait to strike. The only comfort he has is a small, fuzzy, stuffed dog that shares his pillow. The plush puppy has a great fear of the dark, and to help his companion, the little boy swallows his terror and bravely cuddles his comrade while assuring him that there is no monster in that dark room that can scare them. No monster that he will let hurt his fluffy friend. Tonight, they'll find peaceful sleep. There never was a monster in that closet. There was no beast by the window, nothing in that dark to fear. Nevertheless, that small boy conquered his fear of the dark because he needed to in order to help his little buddy. Who was that small stuffed dog? I don't remember his name. I haven't seen him in nearly 30 years. I don't remember what wild creatures I imagined I should be afraid of in the first place, but I remember that my friend helped me get over a huge fear in my childhood. So where did my stuffed doggy come from? I think it was a gift from a family member, but truthfully, his history was much older than his time with me. He was part of a long line of special members from a family starting with one woman who gave that boy and children all over the world cuddly toys, adventure companions, protectors, and best friends. So join me on this tale from the timeline as we look at the life and the legacy of a woman to whom I owe a debt of gratitude, a founder of industry, a survivor of travesty, a champion of determination, and the inventor of the stuffed animal. I would like to introduce you to Apollonia Margarete Steiff, our patron saint of Cuddles. And I have a special guest to present this story. It is my honor to introduce my friend and co-presenter, Luther Dwayne Bear. Howdy, gang. Luther D. Bear here. Thanks for the intro, the Tom Solo. I hope you all enjoy this tale with me today. It was July 24th, 1847, a mild and pleasant day in the small village of Gengen in the Grand Duchy of Baden, a German-speaking sovereign nation, part of the German Confederation. It was here that little Apollonia Margarete Steiff was born. She was the third of 5 children to Frederick Steiff and Anna Margareta Honel. Frederick was an in-demand building contractor and a landowner. This would have allowed Margaret and her 4 siblings to live a comfortable, upper-middle-class life. It would have. But little Gretel, as the family called her, was never going to live a comfortable life. Margaret was a vigorous and bright-eyed baby. Her infectious smile was a hallmark of the Steiff household, but a horrible trespasser would come into their home and leave a lasting impact on the Steiff family and Margaret for the rest of her life. At 18 months old, baby Gretel became ill. What started as a fever in the child progressed, and eventually she would be diagnosed with polio. The disease would leave Margaret in a wheelchair for her entire life. Poliovirus, or poliomyelitis, is an infectious virus that's plagued mankind since prehistory. The earliest known case as of this writing was a young woman who died in approximately 2000 BCE in the United Arab Emirates. It has affected countless numbers of people across our history, and to this day, the World Health Organization estimates that between 10 to 20 million people worldwide are survivors of the polio virus, still living with its effects. Once the infection sets in and symptoms begin, there is no cure. But there is a highly effective vaccine developed in 1953 by a team led by virologist Jonas Salk. In 1988, a global initiative was launched to attempt to eradicate the virus, and it has seen a 99% reduction worldwide. I sincerely hope I will see it eliminated in my lifetime. If that does happen, it will be only the third disease eradicated by mankind. The other two being smallpox in 1980 and rinderpest, a disease that affects cattle, eliminated in 2010. Little Margaret would not succumb to this virus, and by all accounts, it never dampened her spirit. She would remain paralyzed in both her legs, partially in her right arm, and would be plagued by pain all her life. She suffered this way despite her parents sparing no expense in trying to find treatment or therapies to help Margaret, but she was still referred to as ever cheerful. Her sisters and other children from their village would pull her in a small cart to ensure she made it to her classes and even took her with them when they went to play. She said of her time with the other children, quote, "All the children gathered around me, and I organized games in which I was the center of attention. However, the other children often ran off, and then I was left babysitting the tiny tots." End quote. Young Margaret was determined to pursue all the standards of life for a woman in mid-1800s future Germany. She continued her schooling and trained under the sewing and needlework instructor known as Frau Schelling, and completed her training in 1864 at the age of 17. She regularly practiced a variety of pursuits, and while training to become a seamstress, she learned to play and became a teacher to others of the zither, a stringed, flat-boxed instrument that was popular in the region at that time. The zither is a semi-cousin to the piano and the dulcimer, and can have up to 50 strings to be played across the body. Think of it as a guitar without a neck that you hammer with your fingers, and should only be safely played by an octopus on LSD. Ever pushing herself to be more, she used money that she earned as a nightmare instrument instructor to buy the first sewing machine owned in the town of Gengen. And she didn't let this opportunity pass her by either. She became the main seamstress in her hometown for wedding gowns and formal dresses. She was so successful she began traveling across the southern region of Germany making gowns, making felt dresses,
which was the style at the time. No!
And many other pieces of fashion. In 1877, now 30 years old, the enterprising little Gretel opened a small clothing shop back in her hometown and had enough early success to hire several seamstresses. This was not as far, nor as larger than life, as she would become. In 1879, an American women's fashion magazine called The Delineator issued several patterns for the embroidery of animals. The German publication Modenwelt reprinted the patterns, and would you like to take a guess at who started to tinker with them? That's right, our girl. Margaret settled on a little felt elephant and stuffed it with very fine lamb's wool. The enterprising Margaret intended the pint-sized pachyderm to be used as a novelty pincushion, but when it found its way into her shop, it attracted fans with other intent. Little children whose parents brought them to the store were enthralled by the not-so-jumbo-dumbo, and an idea began to percolate in her mind. Margaret made several and gave them to family and friends as gifts. They were a hit, and there was one thing left for our heroine to do. She became a cheery, super successful seller of the very first stuffed animals, not for use as pincushions or any utility tool. These were simply the ambassadors of imagination, toys for children that sold and sold and sold and sold. She expanded her line of kids' toys as she gained more patterns, but Margaret being Margaret, she couldn't settle for simple. She varied the sizes. She tried different materials. She added accessories. In 1892, her younger brother, Friedrich Steiff Jr., or Little Fritz, convinced his stalwart sister to further expand her sales, and with his assistance, by 1895, her toys were being sold as far away as Harrods' shop in London. They were known for using quality materials and the best craftsmanship in the field. Margaret would spare no expense to make them, and made sure there were many readily available. She was known to say of them, "Only the best is good enough for the children." Just 2 years later, in 1897, Margaret's nephew Richard would join the company, and he began to work with his ingenious aunt on new designs and devices, including small metal frames in larger animal toys, and wheels that allowed for pull-along pets ranging from the OG elephants to donkeys, cats, horses, and then they made biscuit-jointed, posable bears. Yep, the bears you're thinking of. Those very bears. The Steiff posable bear came out in 1902, the very first of its kind. Sweet Aunt Margaret must have seen a glimpse of the future in that little bear's eyes, because she gave young Richard her blessing to display him at the Leipzig Toy Fair, and 3,000 bears were sold. But this little artist had not reached the top just yet. That would come with the 1906 printing of an illustration in the Washington Post. Artist Clifford Berryman created a cartoon portrayal of the American president Theodore Roosevelt refusing to shoot a chained bear, based on a real-life incident that occurred in Mississippi. After the image was released, the Steiff bear took a name change that aligned him with the popular president, and he took over the world of toys. By 1907, over 1.7 million Steiff Teddy Bears were sold worldwide. To this day, they continue to be sold, and many hold a high value to collectors and fans of stuffed animals alike. In the year 2000, a Korean collector paid $2.1 million for a Steiff teddy bear, proving that their ability to inspire love and admiration would carry on forever. But the world became a little darker on the 9th of May, 1909. After 61 years of defying odds, conquering adversity, and being just a genuinely great person, Apollonia Margaret Steiff, the mother of stuffed animals and the patron saint of Cuddles, died in her home from complications from pneumonia. She was buried in her hometown of Gangan. She was surrounded by family and loved ones. There are no reports if any of her stuffed animals were in attendance, but I would really like to think that they were. Though her passing was a great loss for all who knew her, and for the millions who knew her fluffy friends, it was in no way the end of the legacy of Margaret Steiff. Her nephews took over the business and continued expanding and developing even more lines of animals, including being the first company to design dolls for the Walt Disney Company in 1931. They also started a line of dolls for the character Meki the Hedgehog in 1951, who I had to look up for this piece, and is apparently the German equivalent to Mickey Mouse in the US. The Steiff Company wound up making the whole hedgehog family, consisting of Meki, Mickey, Mackie, and Mucky, and Clyde. And as their names would imply, as well as the fact that they were German and something made for children in the 1950s, they are like 100% good old-fashioned nightmare fuel. But those creepy little weirdos aside, Margaret and her Steiff Toy Company have filled our world with some of the best friends many kids have ever had. So let's give thanks to the woman who gave us our bedtime buddies, the guardians of imagination, the keepers of our secrets. Thank you, Miss Margaret, for the care of our stuffed friends, and for the love they gave us that is too much to fit into words. And thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you somewhere down the timeline.
Hey gang, before you go, I'd like to take a minute of your time to share a worthwhile program. This is not a sponsor, but it is a call on you to help with a noble and a worthy cause. It's called the Teddy Bear Brigade. Can you imagine being a child victim of a natural disaster or a war? All of a sudden, there are horrible noises or a blinding rainstorm, and absolutely everything familiar is just gone. It's impossible for you to understand. Why can't you go home? Why can't you have your toys? You may have to live with relatives or in a car. Maybe you have to sleep in some big place on the floor among strangers. Your parents keep dragging you to odd new places to get food or clothes or a bed or maybe just a blanket to sleep with. And all of a sudden, some stranger hands you a stuffed animal and says, "It's all yours." And a smile happens. A wonderful smile in the midst of tragedy and struggle and loss. A stuffed animal becomes an instant friend, a confidant, and a piece of normalcy. The Teddy Bear Brigade is working to spread more of those smiles everywhere. According to the Society for Research in Child Development, approximately 175 million children are affected by natural disasters worldwide every year. 50 million have been displaced due to war, either living in war zones or refugee camps, and approximately 140 million children are living in orphanages globally. The Teddy Bear Brigade is a subsidiary of Gleaning for the World, a 501c3 nonprofit that travels the world delivering stuffed animals to children in need in order to spread love and help provide comfort to kids who are enduring some of life's greatest hardships. And you can help. You can make donations by check or money order, make online donations through the secure link on their website at gleaningforcharity.org/donate to Gleaning Charity, or you can send donations of gently used stuffed animals, clothing, and shoes to Gleaning for the World, P.O. Box 645, Concord, Virginia 24538. And all your donations are tax deductible. So thank you, gang, for joining me and for helping to share love and joy around the world.